Welcome to the Hidden Corners, where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind. Welcome to Sci-Fi Saturday, only on the Hidden Corners. Today we are going to be reading a story sent in by one of our listeners. I want to give a big thank you to those of you who have sent us stories, and if you'd like us to read your story, you can email it to thehiddencorners.story@gmail.com. The short story tonight is The Time Before by Judy Snyder, who is the author of Twisted Tales, available on Amazon, and Judy is also the creator of an online haunted house. I'll put the links in the description so you can check out her website and her books on Amazon or Audible. I want to thank Judy for sending this in to us, and I hope you'll enjoy the story. The Time Before by Judy Snyder. We sat in a semicircle in the light casted through the cabin's window. It was twilight time, when every shadow took on an eerie meaning. Ms. Harp had given each of us a gingerbread man and sent us out here, with a firm warning to stay near. We could see her peeking out at us every so often. Twilight isn't safe. We all know that. Normally, we would not have been allowed out at this hour. Except today the storyteller had shown up. We had all sat spellbound as he told about the time before. But then the grown-ups started remembering. Remembering was painful, so Ms. Harp had sent us out here. She even sent out Becky, who at 15 had some memory of the time before. Becky had confirmed for us that it was true. At one time there were buildings that were so tall as to scrape the sky, and silver birds that flew around the world were also real. She had told us about the magic boxes that held people, and voices. There was even a switch in those days to control light. Imagine that. Becky doesn't recall much about the time before. After all, she was only 5 when it became the time after. But the rest of us have no real sense of it at all, seeing as we had been very young or barely born at the time. "What's that?" Jimmy whispered, a tinge of fear in his voice. "Just the wind, wimp," Jason, his twin, answered. "What? You think the Nighters would want someone as ugly as you?" This cracked us all up, because Jason and Jimmy were identical, from their mops of coal-black hair and green eyes to even the number of freckles across their noses. I know this because I counted them once. It was during the rainy season, when we were all so bored, and Miss Harp had us playing counting games. I had whined that I had already counted everything a zillion times, so she told me to count their freckles. They are close to Becky's age, having just turned 14, but have no memory of time before. I overheard Gramps and Ms. Horn talking about it one day. They seemed to think whatever they had seen was so horrible they had simply blocked it out of their memories. Again, the rustling in the bush was heard. "Back," I whispered. "Quiet," she shot back, as we all strained our eyes towards the bushes. She stood up and took a tentative step towards the bush. As if on cue, we all got to our feet, the 4 of us now standing in a tight knot. Suddenly we heard Miss Horn's sharp, "Children," as she roughly pulled open the door. "Hurry!" She didn't have to say it twice. We were past her in a blink. At first glance, I thought she had a broom in her hand. Now I saw it was a rifle. My eyes scanned the room. All the adults had taken positions of defense at the windows. I saw the storyteller help Miss Horn close and lock the door we just entered. Becky was ashen white, wringing her hands, back pressed hard against the wall. Both the twins have moved in front of her, forming a barrier, their cherubic faces void of mirth. I hear Gramps mutter, "Damn, nighters," as he loaded his gun. Ms. Horn is stoking the fire in the fireplace like mad, trying to turn the friendly glow into daylight force. I stand rooted to the spot. Nighters. My flesh crawled. They had evolved in the time after. Not human, not animal really, some mutant crossbreed, a destructive force capable of thinking, nightmarish in appearance, satanic indeed. Light hurt them. They thrived in darkness, sort of the boogeyman on steroids. We can hear them circling the cabin, heavy steps, low guttural grunts, and yips, talking to each other, plotting, planning. A loud crash against the door makes us all jump, but it holds. We can hear something dragging across the low roof. They are literally swarming all over the cabin. Windows burst, and inhuman arms reach through the openings. Ms. Horn snatches up a burning log and thrusts it at the clawing hands. Gramp bellows as one rakes him across the eyes, knocking the rifle from his hands. The storyteller is yelling something I can't understand. I can hear Becky screaming at my back as I follow Ms. Horn's lead, snatching up a burning log. I am running for where Gramp had stood, swinging my torch wide. He is on the floor, clutching his face. I snatch up his rifle and grab his arm. A niter snatches him from the other side, and a vicious tug-of-war ensues. I drop the rifle, and it discharges, its roar thunderous, in the tiny cabin. There's a scream of pain and shock, and I see the storyteller's body slumped to the ground. I've no time to see where he was shot. I pull on Gramps' arm as hard as I can and am sent reeling to the floor with him on top of me. He is screaming, and blood is gushing from where his other arm had been. I see the niter waving it victoriously as it pulls it through the window. I yell to Ms. Horn for help, but she doesn't come. Gramp grabs me close. Through clenched teeth, he hisses, "Grab Beck and the twins and run!" "I can't," I whimper. "Yes, you can." His voice is forced. "You're 10 years old, not a baby. You get them out of here into safety. You understand?" I nod. "I love you. Now run!" He shoves me with the last of his strength. Hot tears spill across my cheeks. I realize fire has engulfed the side of the cabin. I look for Miss Horn with panicked eyes and see her slumped against the wall, her eyes wide and half her face missing, her torch still feeding flames to the burning curtain. I scramble to my feet and dash back to the twins and Becky. Frantically, I push them ahead of me, grabbing Becky's hand, screaming, "Run!" They don't argue. As if on cue, we all break into a sprint, a mad, headlong dash into the woods. Behind us, we could hear the niters howling in victory, feasting on the flesh of those we had to leave. I guess we were to be snacks another night, as they did not give chase. I have no idea how long we ran, or how far. Only we did not stop moving until the first rosy fingers of dawn peeled back the curtain of night. That was 4 days ago. Becky has remained silent. She'll eat if I place it in her hand, and then move her hand to her mouth. Then she'll get the idea. She walks when I tug on her arm. I get the uneasy feeling she isn't here with us, really. Maybe she's back in the time before, with her real parents, and that magic switch that controlled light. Maybe she's back at the cabin, helping Ms. Horn make gingerbread men. Wherever she is, I'm pretty sure it isn't with us. The twins don't speak much about that night either. We had all seen too much. It's easy to tell them apart now. Jason is the one with the scar running along the length of his cheek. One of the creatures had gotten that close. Jimmy had ground out a torch in its eye. We walk all day, scavenging berries along the way and whatever else we find edible. At night we hide sometimes in caves, sometimes up in the trees. I wonder where Gramp thought I would take them. He had said to safety. I wonder where that is, or how far it is. I don't know, so we keep moving. I'm really not sure for how long we have been on the move. Our sleep is irregular, as are our meals. We are all sick. Someone always has to stop for the bathroom. We stink, too, because we haven't found anywhere to bathe, and we haven't a change of clothes. There's also never enough water to drink, because we've no way to transport it. Both boys suffer from nightmares. I think Becky does, too, because she'll make odd cries in her sleep. Me? I don't have them because I don't sleep. Not really. We've given up sleeping in trees because I'm scared one of us will topple off while asleep. That's all we need, some broken arms or legs. This means we sleep on the ground. We take turns keeping watch, except for Becky. She seems barely aware of us. Would she even notice a nighter? We watch in pairs. That way we can keep each other awake. At first, Jason and Jimmy objected to my pulling double watch. After all, they pointed out, they are 14, and I'm only 10. Not only that, but I'm also a girl. I, in turn, pointed out that, yes, they were bigger than me, and 2 years older. If I was still tired, they could easily carry me. No way could we carry either of them. Besides, I don't really sleep anyway, so it was first watching with Jimmy, then with Jason, then both boys watched while I slept. I'm not sure why they listened to me, except Gramp had told me to take them to safety. Every night we do have a fire. The boys can build a really good one. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I pretend we're out camping with Gramp. He's just outside my line of vision, setting rabbit traps or something. Come morning, he'll wake us up with the smell of frying bacon and flapjacks. He'll offer me a sip of his coffee and laugh at my grimace at the bitter taste. This works for a while. Then I remember Gramp won't ever take us camping again. I'd cry, but he said I wasn't a baby anymore, and I had to get Becky and the twins to safety, wherever that is. So I swallow my tears. As soon as it gets light, we start foraging for food. It isn't always easy, roots and berries mostly. We eat our meager breakfast, if there is one, and get moving. We head west, at least I think it's west, following the sun. I decided to go that way because Storyteller said he had come from the west. He goes place to place, a story for food or lodging. He also brings news, so there must be people in the west. On and on we walk, eating whatever we find. Suddenly Becky pulls up short and refuses to move. I pull on her hand. "Come on, Beck." But she just stands there, gazing off to the side. I am ready to scream at her, "Fine, then stay here," when the sound catches my ear. What is that? The boys stopped too and listened. Almost in unison we cry, "Water!" We half run, half fall our way across the field. Tall grasses snatch at us, whipping around our ankles, but we don't care. Water! Somewhere nearby was running water. I am leading Becky by her hand, talking excitedly to her. "You heard it, Beck. You heard what we needed, didn't you? You're still with us, aren't you?" I know I was babbling, but I didn't care. Every so often we'd stop, listen, change direction a bit, and then run some more until we reached it. Gramp would have called it a crick, which is narrower than a creek, but to us it was a lake. We flopped on our bellies and drank our fill, and then we were wading and splashing in it. A funny sound is coming from Becky as she cups water in her hands and drinks. It takes me a while to realize she's laughing and saying water. I throw my arms around her and laugh too. Yes, Becky, yes, water. After a while, we lay resting on the bank, allowing the sun to dry us. We decided to follow the river. That way, we should at least have water. The boys were busy trying to figure out a way to catch fish. I am not big on eating fish, but it sure sounded good. I played with the button on my blouse as I laid there thinking that maybe Beck would come back all the way now that she had spoken. I glanced at her, stretched out next to me, her strawberry blonde hair spread halo-like out from her head. With her cameo features and dark lashes, I bet she rivaled the angels in beauty. Jason quipped, "You're going to pull that button right off. You keep twisting it." "Already did. See?" I show him it's held on with a safety pin. He gaped at me a bit, then said, "Give me the pin." I thought he'd gone crazy, but okay. He then took the lace out of one of his sneakers. I never had fish caught on a safety pin and a shoelace before. It's very tasty. We camped there that night. The stars came out with a full moon. We had a warm fire and full tummies. Becky had spoken. I felt good, almost happy, only I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched by someone or something out there, lurking in the shadows. The boys took turns fishing during their watches so we might have fish for breakfast. Neither was lucky. I had just stretched out next to Becky when we heard the howling, deep and baleful. It echoed all around us. We scrambled to our feet and stood backs to the fire, scanning. Instinctively, we stood in a tight knot, almost shoulder to shoulder, the boys and I holding torches high from the fire, trying to pierce the darkness that surrounded us. To the first howl, another was added, and another, and yet another. It sounded like there was a pack of 7 or 8. What, though? Wolves? Or nighters? I guess at that moment it made no difference. We had no real defense against either. Movement in the underbrush caught my eye. Whatever it was, it moved fast and with certainty. My hands sweated, my heart was pounding against my ribs, and I sucked air in through clenched teeth, reading myself for the onslaught. The next high-pierced keening came at my elbow, causing me to jump and pivot, almost thrusting my torch into Becky's face. Her head thrown back, she screamed back into the night, note for note that dreadful howl. I heard the rustling stop, then retreat. Whatever it was going away. We didn't sleep after that. It was finally morning. We were blurry-eyed and sluggish from no sleep. We had berries and roots again this time, washed down with water. We said very little as we broke camp and trudged westward, following the bank of the river. We hadn't gone very far when we chanced upon a cabin. Well, what was left of one. From the reckless ruin, we knew the nighters had been there before us. Becky and I stood outside while the boys entered first. It was daylight. We didn't fear nighters. We just didn't want Becky seeing any remains, and I couldn't let her stand out there by herself. Though, truthfully, I wasn't interested in seeing any more torn-up bodies either. The boys called soon enough, and we poked through the rubble looking for things to help in our survival. Like our cabin, this had also been basically a one-room affair with a loft for sleeping. We found a skillet, a small pot, some silverware, and a few plates. From behind the turned-over table, Jason produced a spatula and ladle. He had picked up a large knife also, but it was covered with blood, and he dropped it. We took a pillowcase to put it all in. Any foodstuffs lay scattered and ruined. It appeared whomever had lived here had literally thrown everything they could at the nighters. It felt funny going through things that weren't ours and taking, but obviously the folks before us would never use them again, and we needed them. We had started out when I spied the doll, half hidden under an overturned rocker. I picked it up, a silly rag doll. So there had been a little girl here. Next thing I knew, I was running from the cabin, running and clutching the doll to my chest, with scalding hot tears bathing my face. I ran until I tripped and fell over something. Looking, I saw part of a man's leg. I vomited. Jimmy came then and gently pulled me to my feet, walking me away from there. Jason had found some twine and had fashioned a type of sling around the rolled-up quilt so he could carry it on his back. He had done something similar with the pillowcase, which we took turns carrying so that it could be slung from his shoulder. He asked me if I wanted him to put the doll in the bag. I shook my head no. I don't know why, but I needed that doll to hold on to. Sad that those people's death provided us with a better means of survival, but because we now had a pot and water, I was able to fashion a type of stew using roots and fish. The quilt helped us to stay warm and made the ground softer for us all to lie on. We had what Ms. Harp once termed creature comforts. So the days came and went, walking, foraging, fishing, eating, sleeping, and always waiting for the nighters to attack. We knew they were there, lurking just outside of our fire. We would hear their howls, and Becky would imitate them, and they'd back off. How long would that ruse last? Or being thinking creatures, were they just toying with us? And when they became bored, well, I wouldn't permit myself to finish the thought. One day we stumbled into a town. The four of us just stood there. Folks were coming and going. Some stared at us, dirty and disheveled as we were, probably thought we were slow or something, standing there gaping. A voice, soft and cultured, spoke. "Can I help you, children?" We turned our eyes in unison to a man all in black, wearing a white collar. None of us spoke. He repeated his question. Slowly I nodded. "Please, sir, my Gramps sent us. We're looking for safety." He smiled down at me and said, "You've come to the right place. In fact, our little town is called Sanctuary, which means safety." We were given proper baths and clean clothes. Good, warm food filled our bellies. The townsfolk made quite a fuss over us, assuring us the nighters never came into town. By mutual agreement, we let them think we were related. We didn't want to be split up. The time before had tossed us all into the loving arms of Gramp, Ms. Horn, and Ms. Harp. No blood to any of us. They had sheltered and nurtured us. We were family. We would keep it that way. I slept at last, confident that I had completed my task, just as Gramp had wanted that fateful night. They took Becky first and tied her to a large post just outside of town. I screamed and fought best I could. The twins did too. We were told that we simply didn't understand. See, Niders had to eat too, and as long as there was a sacrifice, they left the town alone. Usually, this was done by drawing lots, but since Becky didn't really speak, she was inferior, and therefore a good sacrifice. I still recall as they were attempting to lead us away, Becky's voice, loud, pure, and strong, yelling, "Run!" We broke loose then, and just like that long ago night when we ran headlong into the unknown with nothing but each other, we're still looking for safety, wherever that's at. Until we find it, we'll just keep moving.